I think I will start slowly. First, I would like to welcome very warmly our guests tonight. These are two magnificent women. One is our author, Ece. This is how I pronounce your name, Ece Temelkuran, who wrote many books, but we are going to talk mostly about two of her books published in Naklada Ljevak in past few years. And another one is Ivana Dragičević, who is also our author in Ljevak. I will show you her book too, because we didn't announce it. It's called Nejednaki. So I welcome you both, and I welcome all teachers that are with us tonight. I will say a few words just in Croatian about two of you, how great you are, and then we'll proceed in English. Kao što vjerojatno znate, jer znate najavu, a pretpostavljam da ste pogledale o kome se radi i zainteresirala se zbog toga da dođete večeras. Ece Temelkuran je jedna vrlo posebna žena koja je s jedne strane autorica knjiga, a s druge strane istraživačka novinarka. Dakle, to je ono prvo što je. Ona je studirala pravo i zapravo je naša sugrađanka, ne ovaj čas. Ovaj čas nam je upravo rekla da živi u Hamburgu 6 mjeseci na nekoj stipendiji, ali inače živi u Zagrebu, u koji je došla nakon što je u Turskoj, njenoj domovini, ona je iz Ismira, dakle u Turskoj, njenoj domovini proveden inscenirani, ja bih rekla, neuspješni puč o kojem ćemo također govoriti večeras, i ona je postala tamo nepoželjna. Knjige o kojima ćemo večeras govoriti su te dvije koje ste vidjeli. Prva je Kako ostati bez domovine, a druga je Zajedno, 10 odabira za bolju sadašnjost. Ivana Dragičević je također istraživačka novinarka, politička novinarka, koja se bavi zapravo raznim problemima i mislim da je najviše u svom novinarskom radu se bavila širokim temama i širokim svjetskim problemima. Knjiga koju je napisala i objavila u nakladi Ljevak se naziva Nejednaki, dakle to je ova knjiga koju sam vam pokazala, i govori upravo o sličnim temama o kojima govori i Ece u svojim knjigama. Tako da je meni osobno izuzetna čast i izuzetno mi je drago što su baš njih dvije sugovornice večera, zato što mislim da ćete vidjeti tu dinamiku kako se mogu dobro nadopunjavati. Čuli smo da će biti i druga knjiga Ivanina, a Ece tamo gdje je sada također piše knjigu. Dakle, knjiga će biti, ako vas zainteresira, čitajte. So I said how great you are, and now we'll switch to English. Welcome again. And I think best is to start immediately talking about the books. So in these two books, we might probably start with the second one that's published in Ljevak. In this book titled Together, 10 Choices for a Better Now, you pose some binary choices and some direct ones, such, for example, to choose friendship or to choose to be together. I wonder, and I was wondering when I was reading, how did you choose, how did you decide on what is the most important today in our world? So you could, I guess, talk about 10,000 things, but you chose 10. Why did you choose 10, and how did you choose these 10 that you chose?
Anita, thank you for the introduction, although I didn't understand. And it's a great honor to be with Ivana here and with you. And first, my apologies to everyone for not being able to speak the language. I've been living in Zagreb for 5.5 years, and I can only order coffee in Croatian.
It's very
Yeah.
important.
I'm not, apparently, I'm not very talented in learning languages. And also, when I moved to Zagreb, I had to teach myself how to write in English. So I didn't have much time. And also, everybody made my life too easy by speaking perfect English. So that's why I cannot speak the language yet. Okay, together. I've written together during the pandemic. Actually, while I was writing the book, the pandemic began. But before that, How to Lose a Country was published, and it was published in several languages. So I had to go around the world to do book events, and I talked to several audiences. And at the end of every talk about how to lose a country, about fascism, about rising right-wing populism, and all the confusions and uncertainties that the new political environment brings to us, every audience asked the same questions. Where is hope? Obviously, I depressed them enough, so they were asking for hope. And this actually got me thinking, and that was the starting point of Together. Why are they asking for hope? What do they mean when asking for hope? And does hope really work? Such a fragile word in these harsh times. Does it really work? Because there was this, I was kind of pissed off with this recurring question, constantly the same question. And I felt like, they are putting the burden on me by forcing me to produce hope. And I thought, there is some sort of passivity in this question. And also, I came to think that it's quite an inconsequential question as well, because what would you do differently tomorrow if I said there was no hope? Or what would you do differently if I say there is hope? So I thought like, this question is quite unnecessary even. And then I started thinking about hope, and then, I wanted to replace it with another concept that would be helpful to people in this political and social crises. It's a harsh time, obviously. So, by the way, I wrote the book during the pandemic. So, Zagreb was quite interesting during the pandemic. There was the earthquake. So there was a situation which asked us to do completely opposite things. Like, there's pandemic, go inside. There is earthquake, get outside. And I don't know if you remember, there was this big cloud of dust after 1 week. And the joke was, okay, now it's Godzilla's time. Godzilla will come, and then that would be the grand finale and so on. So, and now the entire world on different levels, especially after the Russia's invasion of Ukraine, everybody on certain level, in different ways maybe, are living the same uncertainty, same confusion, and so on. So I wanted this book to begin with the question of hope, and to be the book that people can turn to in times of political, societal, and psychological crises even. Because we need new words, we need a new politics, and that politics should have a heart, and that heart should have a vocabulary. So I thought these words could be the vocabulary of 21st century politics. Ivana would tell more, probably, I don't know, it probably will come up, this Ukraine-Russia situation. It made me think again that we need a new vocabulary to cut through the very inhumane language of war, for instance. So yeah, how did I choose the concepts? Well, I mean, there is no dictionary of concepts that are important, but I find these concepts central to 21st century politics, or at least I think that they should be central to 21st century politics of emotions.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now that you've been talking about what motivated you in a way, I was thinking how it seems that people are stuck in their status quo and do not know how to move from there in any direction. You obviously, this is obvious from reading the book, you obviously believe in humankind and you believe in being together and you believe in shattering this status quo. So can you please explain the title from the standpoint, why together in terms of them and us? Who is them and who is us in your world?
Well, I mean, like, motivation was not only cerebral, it was also emotional, because after How to Lose a Country, I spent 2 years talking about fascism to everyone and all the, new evils that are occurring here and there, refugee crisis, climate crisis, this and that, and the paralysis of humanity before these problems. So actually, I started losing faith in humankind. This is what I felt, at least. I felt like, why am I writing books? Why am I doing anything at all? Because nothing can change, and people do not want to change anything, and so on. These are poisonous and not so.
Thoughts and emotions, poisonous thoughts and emotions.
Yeah. So actually, I wanted to heal this mental state of mind, so to speak. And I believe that there are many people in that state of mind, especially because of the climate crisis. I'm like, why would we do anything? It's too late for everything, and so on. So I thought the book might help to think in a different perspective and to act in a different perspective. But nowadays, especially last 10, 20 years, the fashion is to write these individual salvation books, like how to feel better. But I don't believe in that. And I find it both ideologically and morally wrong. So I wanted to say to people that, no, you cannot do it on your own. You need at least one another person. So togetherness came from that.
To counter somehow individualism that our world is drawn into.
Yeah, I mean, like, because that feel-good individual salvation narrative is a huge industry, actually. People buying books, reading books, they created this industry of individual salvation. However, I mean, they are proposing, solutions, so-called solutions, within the system. But the problem is the system. So how do we change this system? But most importantly, how do we create the motivation in people to change the system? So, the background of the book is pretty much this.
I might ask you one more question because we turned to Ivana for a bit. In that respect, you've been living, so you grew in Turkey. You were educated there, you worked there, and then you moved to Zagreb. You might explain, if you want, why you chose Zagreb. Is there any specific reason? I have no idea because we haven't met before. But you have been living here for 5 years. How do you compare, if this is at all possible, Turkish society and Croatian society, from what you know, in that respect, in the respect of being very individual, centered to yourself, or being somehow together and having or not having the ideas that we can change something?
first of all, like, well, I don't know if you remember, there was this big billboard in international airport in Zagreb when the new airport was opened. It was written, "Why Zagreb?"
I don't remember that.
And
Okay.
this question has been asked so many times, and this is exactly the reason, because nobody really moves to Zagreb. Everybody goes to Germany or whatever, England, France, and so on. But Zagreb, this is why I stayed in Zagreb. But the actual reason, the practical reason, is Petra Jevak has been a great friend of mine, and in 2014 she forced me, like literally forced me, to buy a small apartment in Zagreb.
Okay.
So
Send regards to both of you and to all teachers. Okay.
And then when the military coup attempt happened in Turkey, I came to Zagreb for a few days, actually, to rest a little bit, to get my head together. But then I slept one night, and I called my husband and said, I'm not coming back. So it was an impulsive decision. And I stayed because Zagreb has a way of welcoming you. It's not very touchy, but it is also, in a strange way, very welcoming. I cannot compare the societies; it would be beyond me. But my experience of Zagreb, Croatia in general, is that, and I keep telling this, but people in Zagreb might not agree, but I see still the moral traits of the 1980s, 1970s, 1960s. Okay. So it reminds me, and I tell this to every Turkish friend of mine, it reminds me 1990s Turkey, okay, when things were a little bit better.
Better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for these thoughts. Ivana, I don't see you, but I hope you are here. Oh, I see you now. As I said in the beginning, you wrote the book yourself on how unequal our world is. Also, you share a lot with Ece, since both of you are political journalists, investigative journalists. Thank you for sharing. If you didn't see, Ivana shared in the chat her last column on Ukraine. So you might want to read this. And from my reading, you specifically write, among other things, about the responsibility of intellectuals and not acting, not that they do much. So can you please, since we are here in the companionship of teachers who are intellectuals also per se, can you comment on where you see problems with inactivity of intellectuals today?
Thank you so much for this. It's one of the chapters in the book which talk about roles in our societies of what individual, but in group or in activity, can do to foster a change or to make things better, in a sense that Ece already mentioned. I just want, before I answer your question, thank you for this call, and I want to greet all of you here, teachers and professors. I'm a daughter of university professor, and I know how important your job is. First of all, because my whole life was filled with my mom's students in our home or in our talks. I know, like, generations of people who stayed here or left Croatia, who are those sparks or stars who fostered that hope in our humanity and in our responsibility for our close environment and our broader societies. And I just want to say that even though the times are, excuse my French, very shitty, that you have, you know, low wages, that in society has creation, importance of education within all these, you know, big reforms or curricula or whatever. No one understands that you are this pillar and this anchor of our life and our future and the responsibility of our future as active citizens. And I just want to support you in, you know, trying to, let's say, keep this flame going, keep this spark, you know, looking at these kids as your investment for all of us. I don't know how to call it. And I want to thank you for, you know, being still here, because as I understand, less and less people want to go into teaching job, and that will be one of the huge problems for our future. Talking about intellectuals and our responsibilities, I've started from an essay, which is an old essay of, I think it was in '67, of Noam Chomsky, who talked about this, you know, intellectual as a moral and social and political consciousness of, you know, of societies, which basically puts this fog of a way of interpretations and, you know, interests that how to say, blur people's judgments. We, unfortunately, I think, even though we have, you know, great intellectuals as Ece, as various other people globally, we unfortunately don't live in times of, you know, when you can have people which can be, you know, moral authorities for the some universality of our humanity, unfortunately, because we now have this bubbleized, or call it however, the parallel truths worlds, unfortunately, which Ece is, you know, building up in her, you know, how to stay without the country, her blue book of these two. And this is the world, unfortunately, where maybe the concept of her yellow book, you know, 10 choices for a better today, is the way to build up back our, you know, social fabrics, our connections as human beings, and our roles in our society, and in that regard also the role of intellectual. In my book, Unequals, this chapter is basically a conversation with Anatoly Mikhailov, who is one Belarusian intellectual, academic philosopher, who left Belarus because of what was going on there. And he basically talks on authoritarian tendencies to suffocate free thinking in that regard. In today's world, unfortunately, of this parallel truths, how they call it, we question facts. If, you know, the earth is a ball, which is, you know, scientifically, that's a fact. When you have fact check, you cannot check a fact because fact is a fact. You can check an information. So we live in crazy times where we need to reestablish wording, as Ece said. We need to reestablish meaning, and we need to establish, even though it sounds maybe too formal, but we need to reestablish roles. We need to put, you know, teacher where their place is. We need to, you know, put facts where they are, and, you know, talk about some universal values which needs to be refound. And that is basically where these intellectuals come into place. I wrote this book 4 years ago, and the acceleration of changes sometimes, you know, makes us throw things that we wrote or said in the basket. But I think that these, which I already mentioned, some anchors, some sidra, as we say in Croatians, needs to stay there somewhere out there for all of us, because without these hearts of which Ece is talking about, without these connections, without these meanings that we need to have as humans, we can just, write our capitulation and decapitation as people. That's for the start for me.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. This is amazing, and thank you for this praise of teachers, because I think we all need to be recognized as human beings and as intellectuals, and they especially in nowadays world. Therefore, I would like to ask Ece, in your blue book, How to Lose a Country, you specifically talk very much about the rise of populism and about how it changes the world and how it changes people. Before we start talking about details in this book, I would like you to think and to reflect, if you can, a bit on what it means when you say populism, and how is this intertwined with educational policies nowadays in terms of inequality, about which also Ivana speaks. I mean, I know that these are huge questions, but these books are terrific in terms of opening them. So I think it's more important to go into these connections with education so that people then decide to read them, hopefully.
Ivana said something wonderful, like, this connection between facts and where facts stand and where teachers stand. Mm-hmm. Is an amazing connection. Actually, we should maybe repeat that more often. Mm-hmm. That's a very useful way, a very shortcut way to explain people how actually teachers and education play a huge role within the political crisis of our times. And it's, my definition of right-wing populism is very much connected to this, because my definition is that right-wing populism is the mobilized and organized ignorance that is forced upon a society to make them do the wrong choices. So it is very much about ignorance and the organized and mobilized ignorance. So one thing, Ivana put it perfectly. Intellectuals have a role in it, but when we say intellectuals, it's like, these people reading and writing books in their ivory towers. But I understand it as Ivana understands it, and probably you, Anita, understand, as the people who are educated and who are giving back to the society, actually. By the way, I didn't know that Ivana is also a daughter of a teacher. I have, my mother and my grandmother were teachers, so I'm coming from the teacher family as well. And I know the pain of being the second important child in the story.
Okay.
My mother years ago wrote a note like, those kids who I didn't give birth to actually make me more tired, exhaust me. So yes, Ivana mentioned this fact problem. There is a political history to this, but which I told about in How to Lose a Country. But we are living in a world where, facts became choices. It's an open buffet. You can choose facts according to your own interest, according to your own liking, and so on. So this makes the intellectual's job and the teacher's job accordingly quite difficult. Mm-hmm. Because this world is round and you're a geography teacher, and then this kid comes from a family who wants to believe that the world is flat. So how are you going to talk to this kid, for instance?
Mm-hmm.
Not only the kids, I'm like, grown-ups do these things mostly, it's not the kids, but I think we have to repeat again and again that you know, it is not a choice. There are facts, and truth is a political matter. Because people made, you know, the last political crisis that has been going on for the 20 years made the truth a very, very politicized concept. It is already politicized, but they politicize it to a degree that truth has become a tool to organize and mobilize the ignorant masses. So yeah, unfortunately, Ivana mentioned it, and this goes for, I think, for many countries, that teachers are underpaid. Unfortunately, we are living in societies or in a system where intellectual people are not praised enough, are not, you know, they're not paid enough, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So while we're trying to change this, we also have to come up with a, you know, something else, like a more a support system, so to speak. So it is very important for a person, any person, to be told that she or he matters.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it doesn't change much. I know, I'm aware of that. But most of us need some psychological endurance as well in these times. So I think recognition in that sense, morally and emotionally, would help our psychological state, at least, and which is, I think it's important.
It's definitely important, yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, meaning of life. Of course, it's better to have more money, but and not being underpaid. But meaning of life is somewhere else, and it is about the joy of seeing the kids that you taught, for instance, become people and not forgetting you. Yeah, because that's the story at the end, the story of being a teacher, no?
Now that we are speaking so much about teachers, I shared my yesterday's column on teachers, and it's in the chat. It's in Croatian, so Ece, sorry, but for teachers,
I'm sorry.
because I also come from a family of teachers, of course, we all do, I guess. And now that you were speaking about the ignorance, I want just to share, I wasn't meant to do that, but I recently translated a book that is already published in Ljevak by Renata Salecl.
Mm-hmm.
A man is a virus to man. Čovjek je čovjeku virus. And just yesterday, I submitted another translation of Renata's book, which is titled, you might probably know it, A Passion for Ignorance. So, you know, obviously, there are people who understand and talk about that in a relevant way. And I'm really glad that we will have all these books in Croatian. But I would like to ask you one thing that was striking for me in your How to Lose a Country. There is a passage where you speak about the events after the coup in Turkey and steps and patterns that you noticed, recognized, which led to the dictatorship. And then you speak about all talks that you had at Oxford's, Harvard's, in these big places where people were looking at you. I'm talking about that for those who didn't read the book yet, to invite them to read. And then you say how they were looking at you somehow down. Okay, you poor woman from Turkey. Turkey is in such a shape now that we know it's not good. like, you know, we know this feeling in Croatia, and that they all thought, how can we help you? And then you say, I realized that they didn't understand what I'm talking about. And the question is how I can help you. So what are you talking about there? Please
Yeah.
tell us. I mean, and you can lead us already to the next thing that I mean to ask Ivana. Ivana, you might step in. How this connects with what we are having today. This was way back.
Yeah.
Past month in.
Yeah, I'm like, beginning from 2016, I published another book, Turkey, The Insane and Melancholy, that was in 2016 in English, and I was in London. Yeah, that was when I felt like a panda and they're going to adopt me. And so
right.
they were like, you know, what can we do for you? And like,
save you somehow.
Yeah, I mean, like that white savior thing is quite prominent in Western European countries, as you also know. So yeah, but then a few years later, they were in the same, excuse my French, but Ivana opened the way. They were in the same shit. So it was like, okay, now I can help you because I know better than you what is happening to you, because you know, right-wing populism comes to the political stage with creating a massive confusion on every level, on psychological level, on social level, on political level. And I know how long it takes people to understand what is going on actually. So, like, because you don't understand, there is this group of people, a politicized group of people, who are breaking down every consensus in a way. So what are we going to do with them? They are bullies, but they are also representative of the real people. So what are we supposed to do? Within the democratic means, it's not easy to deal with such a situation. So yeah, Ivana would be more eloquent about the rest of the question, I think.
Okay, please join, Ivana.
Okay, I can go to the rest of the question, but I want to say also something which I don't know if you touched, but it's something that has to do with our local context in Croatia. When you said some preparatory like thesis for this talk, you've asked basically how much do we understand from within what's happening globally. That was kind of formulation. I want to refer maybe also to this because I think it's important.
Thank you.
Our time. Even though we are, you know, officially EU and NATO member, whatever does that mean? It's another subject. I think we provincialized in a way. You know, we are all white Catholic country with no people of, you know, other skin color, with no talks, public discussions on global issues in some in-depth sense. Okay, now we have as we had, you know, thousands of experts on pandemics. Now we have thousands of experts on Ukraine and Russia, and everyone knows, you know, that Putin is crazy or whatever, you know, is being said in our public space. But at the end, you know, we end up with a politicized public space with unflexible education system that basically, I read your text as we spoke, what you've said, the link, which is completely contrary to something which Finland has, which, as I already mentioned, puts teacher in the center of education. And we have, you know, unflexibility in a sense that, you know, we are living in the TikTok world where these kids, I really, you know, I have a son in high school, and I think they're very smart kids. They're very inventive, but they're lost and they need guidances, not in the sense that someone is, you know, talking to them ex cathedra. but maybe, you know, empathize with them, understands, you know, they are in this hectic, whatever world we live in. And, you know, when we talk about today's time, when we talk about, you know, TikTok culture and TikTok war, as this war is, which is insane, you know, when you look in the real-time social network, this huge, you know, superhero villain Hulk and Inspector Z fight. It's for me, it's too much, you know, what I'm witnessing. And you have kids in our schools. I can relate to example of my son, for example, who reads for his, you know, obligatory reading. He has an Antigone of Aeschylus. I'm a huge fan of Greek tragedy and of Shakespeare and of all classical literature. And I'm insane in looking how this is, you know, super great text to explain, you know, what is tragic hero, what is it, but they don't have the contextualization through the curricula. And probably it always comes to the teacher at the end, who can be free to relate to them, to discuss with them, because I think that's the richness of the teaching process, that you need to play and you need to you know, give some, you know, meaning and sense to that to kids. And I don't see that happening, you know, they just, you know, being dropped with 15 years with Aeschylus and nothing happens. So when we talk about, you know, all these elements, we end up as some, you know, province at the suburbs of this declining European empire, which never was an empire, but, you know, a melange of empires plus this, you know, peasants, and from the suburbs, as we are, always beasts from the Balkans or whatever. And we cannot, I think, I'm sorry that I won't live to see the end game of this globally, because I don't think that what we know as democracy will prevail. Unfortunately, I'm not an optimist. And I would really like, when I die, that someone can wake me up every 50 to 100 years just to see. I said, you know, if I can say, I told you so.
Is it still
no, it doesn't, you know, democracy is also a vague concept if we look of today, you know, it's maybe an illusion. I don't know, maybe this is all a Truman Show, you know, whatever.
Right.
But I don't think, you know, that the world from this perspective will be the thing that will be dominant and that will be universal. Maybe this, you know, concept which Putin is trying to put out, or of which Ece is writing in the Blue Book, will at the end be the one that will prevail. Who knows? I don't know if I answered, but I said so many things, so I'm sorry.
I just want, before we ask teachers to ask questions, and please, if you want to ask questions, you can raise your hand, you can write in a chat, you can write in English or in Croatian, or ask in English or Croatian, it doesn't matter, we'll pass the questions. I would ask you both to think and to say what you think. Should we talk to children, elementary school children and high school children, about what's happening now, about politics, about how it is in our world, and who should do that? And if you have any idea, how? So what do you think? Because, you know, these are the questions. Parents can say, you know, we'll guard them under, I don't know, in some bubble. Or teachers can say, parents should talk about it. So who should do that in a society, Ece? Because, well, you know, we treat them like kids for too long, and they have their questions in themselves. They see what's going on and they don't understand. Yeah. They have no idea how to deal with this.
Yeah, since internet came to our lives, this, you know, teaching is now a two-way thing, because they are reaching the information faster than we do, actually, faster than my generation. So there is an imbalance there. And this question becomes most important when it comes to climate crisis, because, are we supposed to tell them that actually this world might not be when they grow up? Because it is a very depressing question. It's a very depressing topic. And many teachers all around the world are discussing this. Like, are we supposed to tell them lies? Are we supposed to tell them the truth? How are we supposed to tell the truth? And so on. But you don't even need to. They already know. This is one thing.
Do they know how to deal with it?
No.
They know from internet. They know from each other. They know from what people say about that. But do they know how to approach it?
Well, the question is, do we know how to deal with it?
No, of course not. But we have some kind of, 30 years of experience, and we might be able, probably I'm wrong, might be able to better see what can be with.
Very brief answer, so Ivana can talk. There are two options here. Two things to do, let's say, to change the system that caused the climate crisis, and also to adapt to this new world. How are we going to change our lives? Maybe the second part of the topic, of the question, might be more convenient to talk with the kids. How are we supposed to change our lives in this new world, where there is less water, there is more displacement, there's less food, and so on. So they could actually think what we can do, because thinking about what we can do is already an invigorating, refreshing state of mind. So if I was a teacher, I would do that. Although I don't know anything about teaching, so you would know better.
Okay, Ivana, how do you think we should be talking, or should we be talking at all, for example, about the war crisis?
I think in the kindergartens, we need to build, I wrote something down, we need to build connectivity, love, cooperation, community, sharing of emotions, basic level of education. That is very important for societies as ours, because we build up our transgenerational traumas. I really think that is our huge problem. One of my friends, the writer Mima Simic, wrote the other day on Facebook a status which made me cry. She asked, did anyone in your life, because we are a war generation, talk with you about how you felt, what you went through, basic emotional thing where, trauma hits? Nothing. So we have.
That's why I'm asking. I saw this status.
Yeah, which is basically societal, not just individual, because everyone has individual stories. You have this societal things that is like suffocating us, from this war to Second World War to stop this. It's, what Ece said, we now have this future, huge cataclysmic, whatever scenario, plus we have trush pandemics, trush Ukraine, this, that. It's, insanity. And I think for teachers, you cannot put them in the role of whatever, or kids, just that they can be, what I said, anchors and guidance, someone who can listen. You have to put in schools again what we had in this vicious, terrible system, which is more psychology, more, the support system that was there, in the medical sense and in the psychological, especially in high schools and, upper classes. I think that is important. You maybe cannot expect from all teachers to be, the guys who are in the news, who, cover all the stories. Maybe you have beautiful teachers who are infatuated with what I mentioned, Greek tragedies, and they maybe don't know which is legit. They don't need to know how to relate Antigone with whatever, Zelensky or whomever. But they need to be there in a sense of support and, you know, what Ece said, you know, understanding and saying, okay, maybe in the conceptual way, because I have just one story in the 5th grade, my kid, when he got history, I love history. And there is, you know, among them peer pressure, oh, this teacher is, oh, it's difficult, our history is that. And of course, in the 5th grade, they learn, you know, basic civilizations, Sumerians, blah, blah, blah. And of course, he knows because I'm a journalist, we discuss everything, Syria and Iraq. And I said, okay, that is there. You know, and he was like, ISIS was, you know, the thing at that time. He says, okay, so you are saying to me that the cradle of the world civilization is the now place where these terrible and horrific things are happening? And when he asked that, I saw that, you know, half of the job is done because he asks questions. And as long as we are able to ask questions and discuss, I think we're on the safe side, and not to shut other people's mouths and help them, you know, swim, because, you know, we will at the end, you know, swim or drown.
Right, absolutely. We have a message from teacher Sanya Latin. Sanya, thank you very much. I'll read it. I think we need to talk openly with children who want to talk about current topics according to their age. The most important thing is to know how to listen to your students. That, I think, is something that goes back to what also Ece said. Do we know the answers? Probably we don't. But if we show compassion, if we show that we share questions to ourselves, doubts, probably they'll open up and we will make our lives together, as you said in your book, easier in terms that we will share understanding, we will share companionship, we will share friendship. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, like, this is the time of fear, and we have, all of us have numerous fears, and this coming generation is the most unlucky generation, and they already know that. And they are faced with an incomprehensible disaster. Nobody knows what to do about it. Even the adults, even the best adults, don't know anything about it. But this is what makes us human, sharing the helplessness sometimes, if there is helplessness. Although I think there, you know, we can still change everything and so on. But still, sharing the helplessness is an important trait in terms of being a human. So maybe by doing that, one can show them that this is doable, because when they grow up, all these fears can be utilized by dictatorships, by authoritarian regimes, and so on. So maybe it is the most important thing is to show the young people that this can be dealt in a more humane way. The fear can be dealt together in a more humane way. Yeah, I mean, like, in terms of current crises, probably they talk to each other, even the, you know, elementary school kids. And probably they are afraid. And unless we ask them, we don't know what they're afraid of. You know, fear can be a funny thing. So yeah, and also, I mean, like, my mother, she's a painter and she has a atelier, and she's working with small kids as well. And she's constantly complaining, oh, was so exhausting. And I asked her, well, why do you do that? I mean, why do you keep on doing that? Because she normally train artists. And she said, because they are saying these amazing things. They refresh me so, you know, in the most incredible way. So yeah, I mean, like, I would love to, you know, suck some young blood actually as well.
Right.
I'm almost 50 now, and yeah, now I am old enough to want to be with young people.
Right.
They're quite inspiring.
So our teachers have this privilege every day.
Yeah.
We have few more minutes left. I'm waiting for your
We have a
for your
question.
questions.
Hand is up from Natasha Saraya. I see the hand up from.
Oh, I don't see the hands up. Please.
I see Nastasia or Natasha Saraya.
Saraya?
Yeah.
I don't see that. Okay. Can you hear us? If you can hear us, please.
Just raise the hand.
Please ask if this is that you want to ask questions, or anyone else, of course. Do you have questions or comments, or did you already read the books? If you didn't, please do. Please do, because they're going to be a good read, and I hope help you to feel better, understand more, and probably ask more questions. But you know, that's...
I just want to ask teachers something, you know, how flexible are, I don't know which subjects, but as I understood, they're, you know, Croatian language and English, most of them. How flexible are you to, how to say, to involve this kind of discussions or other books on references? How much time do you have within the curricula to be free? I don't know who wants to answer.
Is there anyone?
Dobro večer svima.
Dobro večer.
Ja odgovoriti na pitanje, ali ako ćete biti toliko ljubazni i prevesti na engleski, moj engleski nije tako dobar da odgovorim na ovo pitanje. Što se tiče vremena, imamo vremena, sami uređujemo, sami smo, ajmo reći tako, vlasnici vremena koje posvećujemo svojim učenicima.
Okay, Professor Latin says they are like masters of the time, how many time they can consecrate to their pupils. Okay.
Tako je, hvala. Međutim, ono što mene doista i muči i brine, a to je da smatram da nema dovoljno angažiranih učitelja. To je ono što mene muči.
So she's bothered with that there are not many like engaged or active teachers in that regard, yeah, which
Tako je, smatram, našlo bi se vremena kad bi ljudi htjeli. Evo toliko, hvala. Hvala.
That's very important. Yeah, there would be time if people would need, you know, have the urge to be active and
right.
Yeah, good point. Thank you. Hvala vam.
Thank you, hvala. Ima li još pitanja? Ako nema, onda se vidimo, evo ga, velika većina osnovnoškolaca od 6. do 8. tik-tak, igrice, laka zabava, odvrati pozornost od dubina, empatija problema. Nedovoljno zainteresirani ili potpuno pomireni s putom nizbrdo. Kaže, učiteljica Ivana Perić...
I understand the pessimism there.
Yeah, she's a little bit pessimist, because she thinks that they are not active in thinking about empathy, about problems and environment too, that they're not interested enough.
Okay, then let's finish this on a nice note.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, like, I understand the pessimism, I understand the optimism as well. But what I came to understand is that history doesn't care about our emotions that much. It doesn't matter if you're a pessimist or an optimist. What matters is what you do.
What you do, right. Whether you act or not.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you know, we can feel whatever we want at home, but outside home, that is what makes history, that changes history and so on. And I understand the pessimism, and there are, like, you know, millions of reasons to be a pessimist. And there are, like, you know, 15,000 reasons for me to cut my wrists and jump out of the window. But then this doesn't work, you know, neither for me nor for the world. So it is more practical in a way to choose to do things.
Right.
You know, regardless of the fact that you are a pessimist or an optimist. So maybe we don't need those dichotomies like pessimism, optimism, and so on. But yes, of course, there are reasons But the harder thing is to find the way out and trying to work for the way out. I know these are like cliche things to say, but cliches are there for a reason. At the end of the day, I think one should remember what happened during the earthquake in Zagreb and during the pandemic. We didn't kill each other because all these films that the system is producing is telling us when there is a crisis, it's going to be dog eat dog. But then humans
It didn't happen.
Actually do otherwise. What we saw was solidarity, like the first reflex was solidarity. So this is what being human is. So human might be better than the horrible examples that we are constantly shown. We are better than we think. So that's why I'm like, this humankind deserves a little bit more support, I think.
So this is the great thing to finish today, because this is already some optimistic thought for action. And I think that we can thank all our speakers and listeners tonight. Here are thanks in the chat. Thank you very, very much, both of you. And I hope we will be able to read your new books soon, because your thinking is relevant. And I think that this is what matters, because that's what makes us human too. Thank you very much, Ece.
Just to make a photo. Wait, smile.
Smile. Okay. And we'll see each other next month. Again, thank you very much once again for your patience and for your interest in all that we are doing.